Hi there. This is going to be a quick tutorial on the Adobe After Effects interface. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what After Effects is and give you a little tour of different window panels and tools and stuff like that. So Adobe After Effects is a tool that is for motion graphics. And basically, it's a 2D compositing tool that has some 3D capabilities. You can bring any file from Photoshop, Illustrator, and other Adobe programs, and you can actually animate those things over time. So I like to think of After Effects kind of like Photoshop or Illustrator, but over time. When I open up After Effects, get this is the first window that I will see, and it's going to ask me if I want to open a project or create a new project. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project, and right away it's going to ask me, or right here, it's going to ask me if I want to do a new composition or if I want to do a new composition from imported footage. So I'm just going to create a new composition in After Effects. So I'm just going to click that. And so this is a window that comes up when you create a new composition, and this is where all your composition settings are. So the default settings are fine. You can name your composition, and you can use the default HDTV 1080 29.97 frames per second. This gives you a high definition resolution and a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is fine for what we're doing in class. The pixel aspect ratio, you want to be square pixels. By default, it is already on that. Your frame rate is 29.97 seconds or frames per second, and that is fine. You want your resolution set to full. And another thing to remember that is pretty specific to After Effects and is different from Premiere is that you need to set the duration of your project timeline. So in Premiere, if you remember, you can just drop a clip. Let's say you have a 2-minute clip. You can just drop that clip into your timeline, and if you exported that clip, it would be export as 2 minutes. In After Effects, by default, the oops. I'm going to go back into that composition settings. By default, the duration is 30 seconds. So if I had a 2-minute clip and I pulled that into my After Effects project, then I would only see 30 seconds of that clip. So if I want to see 2 minutes of it, if I want it to be 2 minutes, then I need to set it to 2 minutes in my composition settings. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 2 minutes. Of course, our time code is hour, minutes, seconds, frames. You can also choose your background color. So if you click on this, you can choose whatever color you want. I'm going to leave it as black, and then I'm going to press OK. And now I have my composition here, which of course is empty because I haven't added anything to it yet. So now that we have a composition, I'm just going to talk about the interface a little bit. We have our project panel over here. This is where we're going to organize our media. If I right click this, I can create a new composition if I want to. I can create a new folder, so I can organize media via folders, which is really useful if you are using a lot of media, which a lot of times happens in After Effects. You can create folders to organize it. You can pull in Adobe Photoshop file, and you can also import from other applications. So I can see that this is my composition right here. To the right, I've already talked about, this is my preview panel. Something important, so a couple things important to remember. You can zoom in and out in different ways depending on how you have your mouse or trackpad set up. And you can also zoom in and out over here. And so you can have it fit the frame, fit your window if you want to. Another thing that's important to remember is that you have the option to preview your project in different resolutions. So I have full resolution, half resolution, third, quarter, and custom. And the reason that this exists is because sometimes we are doing pretty render heavy projects, edits, effects in After Effects. And the playback can be slow because it's hard for your computer to process that in real time. So you can actually bring your resolution down for your preview. So you can actually preview your changes at a lower resolution, which will help them preview smoother. So if you bring in an image in here and it looks really pixelated and you don't want it to look pixelated, this is a thing to check. You may be just previewing it at a lower resolution. So if you put it on full, then you'll always be previewing it at full, but know that that can hold you back in terms of preview times. So we'll go over more of these options in a different tutorial. Up here you have your toolbar. So we have different move tools, selection tools, vector, shape tools, a text tool, and then various kind of cleanup tools. And also when you are working with a tool, a specific tool, maybe a shape or pen tool, you will see other options up here that might give you like what an option of what you want your fill or your stroke to be. And over here are different setups for the interface. So right now we're working on default. And if you click, and these are different options, there's standard. I think default is a good one to start with. You can also choose text, which will bring up your text properties and your paragraph properties over here and your effects and presets. But let's just keep it at default for now. So down here you will see the timeline and the layers panel. So the layers panel works in a similar fashion to in Photoshop. And we'll kind of go over that a little more in depth in another tutorial. But as you add media to your timeline, you will see the media create layers. And so you actually have layers that work a little bit differently where you can, well, I guess it's not different, but so your layers, you can apply changes to the layer, but you can also apply changes to the media that is located on the layer. So those are some things that we'll get into. When you are working on a project and you are ready to export that project, you will go to File, Export, and you have some options here. So you can add to render queue, and you can also add to the media encoder queue. And so what we're going to do is just add the render queue that is built into Adobe After Effects. But you can also use Adobe Media Encoder. And Media Encoder allows you to be a little bit more detailed and specific in terms of how you are compressing your animation file. So that will be something that we will talk about in a different tutorial. But I'm going to go ahead and add to render queue. And I'm just going to open this up real quick and just go over it real quick. Basically, the important things to remember is that you have some settings here. Everything's blue. In blue is something that you have settings for that you can check. So under best settings, obviously you want to choose best for your quality, unless you don't, like you want to render out like a sample or something. Your resolution is full. You want to check and make sure that your resolution is matching your composition resolution for your export. Another important thing is to remember to check your duration and your frame rate. But your duration is really important, right? Because you want to make sure that you're exporting your whole document. So I'm going to click OK. And so usually by default, everything is fine, except The biggest thing that students end up having problems with is the codec. And so under lossless, if I double click lossless here, it opens it up. It says telling me it's going to export it to QuickTime. That's great. But the format, under format options, it says animation, and animation is the codec. So if we export as animation codec, we will still get a QuickTime file, but unfortunately, like if we open it with QuickTime Player usually has to process any video that was compressed with an animation codec. And so if you may have experienced that before, where you go to open a video and in QuickTime Player, and it has to process the video first, and that's because it is the video has a codec that is incompatible with QuickTime Player. So we're just going to click that and change those options. So under video codec, we have some options here. One option that is missing as of late, the latest releases of Adobe After Effects, is H.264. And of course, we talk about using H.264 in other programs like Premiere, as a highly compatible codec. That gives us good compression while maintaining higher quality. Unfortunately, After Effects does not support that anymore. I think there are ways to add it in to After Effects. I haven't done that. But other codecs that are also, these are all really good codecs. Obviously, After Effects wouldn't include them if they weren't. But I think that any Apple ProRes codec is going to give you a good result. So I'm just going to choose Apple ProRes 422 here and choose OK. And now I'm exporting as Apple ProRes 422. And QuickTime Player is going to like that. So the audio output, usually the format defaults are fine. I'm going to press OK. And then when you under output 2, if you click this, then this is where you can name your file and press save. And then when you do that, you can click render. So I'm not going to do that right now because I don't have anything to render. I'm going to make a separate video that is just the render directions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a background for my